Yeah, I was just wondering if you had any observations of, again, when people are coming for mental health help, um, that we are in this culture, we have this quirky thing where we take it on as an individual versus a collective experience. And so when a mental health client or patient is coming for therapy or for counseling, they're coming as an individual, but we're experiencing this impact and this trauma collectively.
Yeah, it is so interesting. I think that it's a fascinating time to be a counselor because in some ways you are a small part of that collective experience where, I do hear 30 or more stories of how different individuals are impacted every single week. And so I hear from, the RN who's working on the front lines in the hospital, and the mom who's trying to hold it together at home and homeschool and do her job, and the dad who's trying to do the same but misses the sort of camaraderie of the office and is grieving that and is dealing with an aging parent, and then you hear the story of the aging parent, and it's just really interesting to sort of see how differently and yet similarly we're all impacted by this. And how alike we all are in the things we value and the things we prize and the things we need and want. And so you sort of hear your story told by so many other people and relate so much, but never before as a counselor have I been in a position of sort of saying me too to everything someone's saying. So it's an interesting thing to connect and identify so much because you're really kind of in the same place. And so you can't say, here are all the answers, because this is fresh territory. There are no answers other than I'm here, I'm holding space for you, you're holding space for you with me. We're going to sort of let this be known and felt and experienced in this moment, because if it's not, then there's going to be a secondary symptom. There's going to be secondary trauma. It's not going to be healthy to bury it or to have it come out sideways. It's got to be expressed. You have to say it. You have to yell it. You have to, do whatever you can do to kind of not hold all of this in right now, because it's mission impossible. It's more than we can handle. And it's okay to not be able to handle it, because none of us are.
Yes.
A lot of people talked early on. A lot of moms talked to me about how, they were looking at things on Facebook and Instagram about, the perfect homeschooling parents. And, well, so-and-so did 6 hours of crafts with her kid and I didn't do any. And, they're competitively quarantining. They're quarantining at me. I can't take it. And I identified with that too, because, as a working parent, it's hard not to compare and say, well, I don't, how much time am I able to do homeschooling, and what I thought I'd be a better homeschooler than this, but it turns out, maybe I'm not, and maybe I have to feel that. And, that doesn't feel so good. It doesn't feel egocentric that, I'm not, maybe as good at this as I thought I might be. And the self-forgiveness that has to come into play is at every moment, and letting go of the comparison trap and putting down the phone or the computer and saying, I'm going to do this to the best of my ability. And I can't look right or left. I just have to do my personal best, which some days is just, bathing one of the kids, which is an accomplishment.
Yes. And this is your day, kid.
Right. It's your day. Get in there.
We're winning quarantine. Winning.
Right.
This is what winning looks like.
Yeah. The problem is it's always the same kid, the one who likes to get in the bath, the other one, I don't know. So it's, but it's hard, not something that we were trained to do, and it's not really something that, I mean, you know, we're taking, you're adding 5 jobs to the one job that was already hard.
That's
And
beautiful.
so we're all stressed, and it's, you know, we are in it together, you know, we are all
together.
a parallel process.
Yeah, well, that was just beautiful. What a beautiful testimony to holding space for that deep listening and having that me too experience of identifying with certainly all that basic emotion and all that basic release that's going on. That is the honest conversation I wanted to have about mental health, is that we're interconnected, we're in it, communally. The only way I think we're going to come out of it is together, helping each other out, this sort of mutuality of extending ourselves. And for me, the thing that helps me not wallow in despair is service, is somehow being of service to some other people. It just creates a shift from despair for me. So I recommend that as part of frontline mental health CPR, if you will. So let's talk resources. So what are some basic resources for people out there, self-care or reaching out for help? What do y'all recommend?
You know, I'd love to just touch on the point that you made about service. And, you know, I'll say this one thing. There's a wonderful quote. I think it might have been Winston Churchill. I'm not sure. Never let a crisis go to waste. That came to mind when Carissa was speaking about the transitions in making mental health more accessible. Historically, Husky insurance did not cover telehealth.
That's right.
But it also didn't provide adequate transportation for people to get to their telehealth appointments. So, for many years, we've seen Husky patients, we would coordinate a time for transportation to bring them to their appointment. But the transportation that was provided would come an hour late, or would leave them there for an hour at their therapy appointment and not come, and so it was underutilized. So so this one window of this pandemic is that now these people that were not going to have literal transportation to their therapy appointment can do it over telehealth, and it'll be covered. So that's such a positive outcome of that's one example, right, of good coming of something horrible. The other thing is with the telehealth pandemic, or with the telehealth issue, is that I think that there are so many people that are chronically ill who now may be able to receive services, and we see a lot of them, and they just don't have the access. So, I think we are finding sort of like little silver linings. And I guess, I would say in terms of self-care, trying to find those silver linings is really hard some days, but I really do try to find them. And, like right now, the weather's getting nicer. We can get out in the fresh air and spend more time with family, and spend time maybe getting some movement. Some people are growing gardens, people are baking. People are talking on the phone, and they're maybe having deeper conversations than they would have if they just saw people in person, because, they're actually speaking instead of just sitting in the same room together looking at their phones. So there have been some positive ideas that have come. And maybe when we get back to life, we won't be as crazy and as busy and as overscheduled. Maybe we will have learned something. So, I just try to do like 1 or 2 things a day that, help me to kind of set myself, like, for example, I try to get out and walk every day. That's something I didn't do before. I always complained I never had time to exercise. And now I can't make that excuse. So I get out and walk, and it does make you feel so good, to get your steps and, drink your water because you're right by the sink. You could just fill up and, you're only 10 feet from the water dispenser. And, there's kind of no excuse not to sort of, do these basic self-care items that make you feel so much better. And then reach out for help if needed. There are so many good resources, and, the fact that there is telehealth, I think maybe makes it a little bit more accessible to be able to bring therapists into your house, to literally have that conversation in your PJs. You don't even have to worry about getting childcare if you can't. You can put the kids in front of a movie and sit in the other room and talk to somebody. So I think there are some, some little tiny silver linings.
Absolutely. All of